Good afternoon, Joe here, budgetboss.ca. It is Saturday. It is the 13th of February, the day before Valentine's Day, and I'm jumping on to talk to you about a Dave Ramsey interview on Fox News. But first things first, like, subscribe, and share this video. Make sure you're double tapping that Insta screen, get that heart working, and if you are on Facebook, like and share the post. I want our following to grow and grow and grow. It has been growing at a tremendous rate, and I want that to continue, so make sure that you are doing your part to help out as much as you can, and I'd really appreciate that. So my man Dave Ramsey is in hot water right now. And why is he in hot water? We would like to see his interview with Fox News. Now, I gotta give you full disclosure, I am a big Dave Ramsey fan. I know a lot of people aren't. Now, Dave Ramsey, in my opinion, is probably one of the best financial gurus there is. Reason being is he gives it straight. Now, at times, though, people will actually say that he is a bit too old school or a bit too out of touch. And the reason for me why Dave Ramsey is actually very, very, very great as a financial guru is because he gives it straight. Now, this might not fly with most people, but if you know me and if you've met me before, and spoken with me for, I am very blunt. I try to give it to people straight, and the reason why is this. I don't like to beat around the bush and actually tiptoe around things that should be completely obvious in my opinion, such as debt is bad. Debt is bad. You need savings. There is no other way in life to live, in my opinion. The problem with it is when people don't take a stance on things and they actually don't put their full heart into what they're saying and what they believe in, then chances are they don't really believe in anything. And that to me is problematic. Someone who doesn't fully believe in what they are saying will often give you platitudes or wishy-washy gray area thoughts. Dave is not one of those people. Dave is actually pretty rock solid about everything he believes. Now, that being said, I don't agree with Dave on everything. I'm probably 90% of the way towards what Dave says on all things. I also understand where he's coming from. There is an aspect of what Dave says that's very important that a lot of people don't get. So for instance, if Dave is saying that student loan debt is bad, he is actually coming from a place where he has seen the fright and terror of student loan debt on a regular basis. He's helped millions of people get out of debt. And the big thing that people need to understand is when you've seen deep down how bad people's finances are, and I have seen that. I've seen it with myself before I got myself out of debt, and I see it with my clients, and I see how deep and dark it can be in those spots. So you can't give false platitudes about like, well, maybe you should do this or maybe you should do that. No, you need to do this. And it's a frightening thing to hear at times. So some people, when they hear this, they don't take it the right way. So Dave went on Fox News and he was actually talking about the debt forgiveness pledge that the likes of AOC and Elizabeth Warren are bringing forth towards Congress and the Senate in America. So basically, this is student loan forgiveness. And in case you don't understand it, they're proposing or going to propose a pledge that they would forgive a portion of your student loan. And let's be honest, the student loan crisis in America is massive. Over $1 trillion in student loan debt. And I've been there, full disclosure. I had $25,000 in student loan debt, plus other debts on top of that before I turned the age of 25. That is scary stuff. It actually hampered my way of moving into life, starting my life. I didn't get these debts paid off till I was about 30. That is terrible, terrible stuff. So I know exactly what this is all about. I've been there before. And if you go to the States, or if you're in the States, you understand that this problem is magnified tenfold. And you see people coming out of school with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, trying to begin their life. And oftentimes they're struggling to find a job and in massive student loan debt. This is a double-edged sword that people are just getting crushed. And that's why I think it's important for people to understand where he's coming from, what he's seen. And if you are in this position, yes, this could ring a very, very harsh rhetoric towards you. You may not like hearing this, but he is what he is. So let's jump into the interview, and I'm going to pause and give my feedback as time goes throughout the interview, but let's see exactly what Dave says and see exactly if he's on the right track or if he's out of touch like people are saying. So here we go. Dave Ramsey on Fox News.
Well, to start with, need to understand we got $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. $192 billion out of that, not so much. Let's do some ratios, folks. If we're going to do math, we probably ought to play math. Now, on top of that, when you dig into it, the whole idea that student loans being forgiven is going to stimulate the economy, that assumes that people were getting ready to pay them off this year and instead would use that same $40,000 that they were getting ready to pay off their student loan and stimulate the economy with it.
So this part here is kind of confusing to me. Now, I agree with Dave saying most people who have a large amount of student loan debt are not going to transition all that money from their student loan debt into stimulating the economy. Chances are it would be towards some sort of other purchase which stimulates the economy, such as buying a home. But for the most part, people who are paying off a student loan debt would use that money to put into the economy. So I kind of don't get what he's saying there. I kind of get it, but I kind of don't. I know by having debt and using payments on a monthly basis to get rid of that debt, if you weren't doing that, you would take that money and spend it somewhere. Hopefully you would save some of it at least, but most people would transition that money into the economy or stimulate the economy by going out to a restaurant or purchasing something or saving and buying a home, something along those lines. And every time you purchase a home, that stimulates economy because there's all sorts of other jobs that are factored into that are used to purchase a home, i.e. a realtor, mortgage broker, stuff like that. So that part there is a bit confusing to me, but let's hear what else he has to say.
Again, that's economic hogwash. It's smoke and mirrors. It's simply not going to happen.
Dave, I just think there's a moral hazard doing this.
Okay, so this guy, I get very weary when people say things like moral hazard. So if you're not familiar with the 2008 financial crisis, there was a moral hazard with bailing out the banks. Now, I agree with the moral hazard. The problem with it is that it almost had to be done specifically because people's savings and life savings were tied up within these banks. Now, did you have to bail out the CEOs? No. Did you have to actually bail out the hedge funds that were bankrupting people or the people that gave these risky loans? No. You didn't have to give golden parachutes to these people. But at the same time, this moral hazard part of it, it is a right-wing talking point that sometimes, in my opinion, doesn't fully fit the narrative of what we're going after here. So let's see what he has to say about moral hazard, because I personally, I don't like anyone imposing their morality on me, and I don't like when other people impose their morality on others, but at the same time, there could be more to it than that.
You're young,
absolutely.
You signed a financial contract, you have an obligation to pay that money back.
Absolutely. Well, listen, there's some situations where folks are hurting, and this thing has it's gotten completely out of hand.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people's lives who have been destroyed by this program.
That is true. So maybe the moral hazard isn't so much that we are bailing people out. Maybe the moral hazard is that we're lending these people this insane amount of money to begin with. Now, yes, the barrier to entry to university is a lot higher in America, and I empathize with that because that's a terrible thing. Everyone who should be able to get into higher education should get a chance, and money should not be the issue that prevents you from going there. But at the same time, if you need $100,000 to go to school, maybe you should have to think twice about that. Now, I'm not saying you don't deserve to be in school or you're not smart enough, or if you're disadvantaged, that doesn't suck. But at the same time, you have to weigh the option of taking out $100,000 loan or $50,000 loan, and you're not ready for that, especially if you're young, 17, 18, 19, 20, and you're taking out these massive loans, and it's something that you may never be able to pay back. So I get the moral hazard aspect of it. I just don't think the forgiveness part of it is the full moral hazard. I think a huge blame needs to be put on people who actually gave out these loans to begin with, and that's the actual student loan program in the States. And we have the same issue here in Canada, obviously not to the degree that's the States have it. So let's hear what else Dave has to say.
Somewhere. I'm fine with that. But this has nothing to do with really helping people. This is a political gimme by progressives simply trying to buy votes. And we know that because when you go from $10,000 in forgiveness to $50,000 in forgiveness, the people who benefit are not lower income people. The vast majority of people that have an average income or less have less than $10,000 in student loan debt.
So here's the issue with what he's saying here. I don't think, and he says vast majority, so we can't, when you're dealing with a 2-minute clip, we can't just look at it and just say, okay, there is no black or white issue here. There's a bit of gray. So he does say the vast majority of people with larger student are in the middle income or a middle class in America. And that is true from what I gather. Most people who are in the lower income bracket in the United States aren't taking out massive student loans because oftentimes they don't even get to the point where they can get that student loan because of where they're from. It might be a socio-economical issue, and that in itself is terrible. So in this area, it's a bit dicey what he's saying. It's a platitude that doesn't fully jive. And I think ultimately people pick this apart to say that, no, you can't be poor and have a massive student loan. Oftentimes you start off as middle class and then this massive student loan knocks you into the lower classes or lower economic stratas in America. So that in itself is a bit problematic.
The majority of people who would be blessed by moving it from 10 to 50 are high income earners. So again, this is all political rhetoric. It's not reality.
You come from an interesting perspective. You talk to Americans across the country every day on your radio program.
Yeah.
What do you believe is the right number or the right answer for the next stimulus check?
Well, I don't believe in a stimulus check because if
Wow. Okay. Don't believe in a stimulus check. Now, people hearing this are going to really jump on this part. So this is the part, whether or not you believe in loan forgiveness, this is the part that really sinks Dave, I guess you could say, with the minds of some progressives.
$1,400 changes your life, you were pretty much screwed already.
So if you have been following along, people have picked up on that actual statement there. If $600 changes your life, you're pretty much screwed already. That is a big headline that people are using as clickbait to actually share what he said and attempt to cancel Dave.
You got other issues going on. You have a career problem, you have a debt problem, you have a relationship problem, you have a mental health problem. Something else is going on if $600 changes your life.
That is true. I've been in a position in my life where, in my mind, Dave is not wrong here. Now, $600, if it is changing your life, there are some major issues fundamentally. Now, I'm not saying you should not get your stimulus. I believe you should get your stimulus, especially in a position like now where you could have lost your job or been furloughed off work with no fault of your own, specifically because of coronavirus and lockdown procedures that are going on right now. I have lots of people that I know and lots of friends that are currently not working, mainly in the hospitality industry, because of the fact that the government here in Ontario has shut them down and they are relying on government money to live. So ultimately, the big thing about it, if that is changing your life, then there is some fundamental problems though. You can't look at it as like he's saying don't get the stimulus. He's saying that basically you need to look at the greater picture as well. It could be an employment problem, it could be a relationship problem, it could be a savings problem, it could be all the above. Now, in my opinion, yes, if the stimulus is available, get the stimulus, and they should be getting stimulus to people's hands as soon as possible, and I hope Joe Biden does that for the people in America. But I also understand that there's got to be a major fundamental change in how we handle our money. And if you notice, last year when coronavirus shut down the economy here in Ontario, Canada, within 2 weeks. So that means people missed one paycheck and they're already at risk of missing their rent. So this is late March, April 1st, when that came around, people were already talking about a rent strike because they could not pay their rent. So ultimately, people don't have savings. And I think that's a huge fundamental issue as well. I'm not saying don't get the stimulus. I think the stimulus is needed, but I'm also saying that yes, you do need to have some savings so you can tide yourself through these rough patches. Because if it's not a pandemic now, it's going to be something else later. If you get hurt, injured, sick, this happens all the time, and I see it with my clients on a regular basis. So I think that's what Dave's getting at there.
And that's not talking down to folks. I've been bankrupt. I've been broke. And I work with people every day who are hurting. I love people. I want people to be lifted up. But this is, again, it is just political rhetoric, and it's just throwing dollars out there. It's peeing on a forest fire. It's absolutely ridiculous.
So that is Dave's post. So ultimately, this post itself, this interview is really striking a lot of fire with a lot of people. And the one thing that he left it with is that it is a political ploy. It is actually a situation where people are trying to buy votes. In my opinion, they don't actually care about your plight, because if they did care about your plight and they did care about the moral hazard of getting rid of the student loan because they think you're unjustly put into that student loan, they would take a look at the predatory lending within the student loan industry. The big issue with this is that we're allowing people to take on these massive debts at a point in their life when they're vulnerable, when you're young and you don't fully grasp the magnitude of what you're doing. I've been there. I've had massive amounts of debts and it weighed on me. I was struggling throughout school. I worked part-time while I was in school. It still wasn't enough. I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook at that point in my life. It was a very difficult point in my life. And the last thing I probably needed at that time was someone handing me thousands of dollars to use for school when I didn't even know how to pay a bill on time, which was ridiculous. So this is Dave's view on it. And I think in that situation, in terms of the stimulus check, I believe you should go get the stimulus if you need the stimulus. I believe that everyone should be able to access it, mainly because this reason is because you are being shut out of your job with no fault of your own. You are being shut out by the government. So if the government's going to shut you out, then the government should actually step up and provide something for you to supplement your income while they are the ones who's shutting your work out. And this is where the argument comes into play, like lockdown versus no lockdown. And people are losing their mind on this, mainly because, well, you're telling me I can't work and then I can't take care of my family. This is a massive issue. And that's why people's tensions are so high with this. And ultimately, yeah, I get that point of view. It's a valid point of view. You're forcing me not to work and I can't provide for my family. And yet you're squabbling over how much money you're going to give me in the form of stimulus. This is kind of a very sick topic. So ultimately with Dave, I think we really need to understand where he's coming from. He is a multi-millionaire, but at the same time, though, he does help people get out of debt on a regular basis. I think he's looking at the greater picture, and I think people are picking apart little pieces of what he said there, i.e. you shouldn't get the stimulus, or i.e. you shouldn't get student loan relief. And the big thing about it, I think it's a greater picture that he's looking at, that debt should be paid off. You should strive to not be in debt. You should strive to make sure you have savings so you're protecting your ability to not go into debt. And then when, he calls it Murphy, when Murphy's Law comes into play and it strikes you down, which it will do. It happens all the time. It happens to me still. It happens to a lot of people I know. Something will happen. But the ones that can weather the storm, have savings, don't have debt payments that they must make every month during this period of time. It's just a messed up thing. So I understand why people are frustrated with Dave with this interview that he gave with Fox News, but I also understand where Dave is coming from. I still believe Dave Ramsey is actually a valuable source of information. I believe his overarching theme is something that is very useful to people. And I also believe that people who take this a certain way are in a position where they're vulnerable and they don't want to hear that right now. So I get that too. Tensions are high and people don't want to hear this kind of thing right now. So did he say something wrong? No. Did he maybe say it the wrong way? Quite possibly, and oftentimes that's where people have an issue with Dave Ramsey. Me personally, I like bluntness. I like when people say something and they mean it, and I like it when it's the truth. And yeah, he didn't really say things that were that wrong, and that the overall theme of it was quite relevant. And I want my clients and everyone I know to get to a position where they don't need the government to bail them out, where they don't need a stimulus check, where they don't need any help from anyone. No matter who gets elected or who makes decisions from the top, you are secure in your life. And no matter what happens, you flow with the water and you're putting money into savings, paying off debt. If you're out of debt, you're paying off your home. You're getting through these tough periods on your own without government assistance. And yes, that's not easy to do, but at the same time, you can get there. I see it happen all the time. And that's my goal as well, to get to a point where completely financially free and no one is jumping down my throat and ruining my life by decisions they make and government issues that come up on a regular basis. I don't want to deal with that junk. I just want to live my life to the fullest. So yeah, that's my take on Dave Ramsey's post. I, still love Dave, still think he's great, but I also kind of see why people are not taking this, not taking this well, because the tone he sort of gives. He seems out of touch to people. I don't think he's out of touch, but I could see how people would feel that way. So what are your thoughts on Dave Ramsey's post here? What do you feel? How do you feel about him saying the stimulus shouldn't happen? Maybe not specifically this stimulus, but stimulus in general, and student loan forgiveness. Do you have a student loan? Do you think that student loan should be forgiven? I personally think that the student loan program itself can be predatory, so we need to relook at that in general. So leave a post. Remember, I want you to like, follow, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Double tap that IGTV screen. Make sure you're showing some love, and I thank you for that. I appreciate it. Have yourself a great weekend, and happy Valentine's Day tomorrow, lovers.